flip the whole route. This is the Little Miss Jacob Show, where the real ones rise and the rest lay low.
All right, besties, we are back for part 2 of dissecting the New York Times hit piece on Justin Baldoni, aka another masterclass in media manipulation. If you thought the first half was shady, just wait until you see how deep this rabbit hole really goes. Spoiler alert, it's giving PR planted, cherry picked, and journalistically bankrupt. But before we dive in, I gotta say, I'm actually sort of devastated today. Not about the hit piece itself on Justin Baldoni. We knew that was coming. No, I'm sad because people still don't know how to read the media. Like, at what point do we learn? Even Piers Morgan, who has been in this industry for decades, he admitted that at first he felt bad for Blake. And listen, I get it. A lot of people did. That's the whole point of a good smear campaign. But at what point do we stop getting played, you guys? When are people going to finally recognize how cry bullies operate in cahoots with the media, how they frame the story, they stack the deck, and they twist reality just enough to make you feel something before you think twice to question it? And that's how they win. But they're not going to keep winning, okay? That's why I'm here. That's why you're here, I hope. And I will say one thing that did warm my cold media hating heart. It was seeing that Cancel the Times was, we'll call it trending on my Twitter feed. Finally, people are waking up. The New York Times thought that they could just drop another hit piece and skate by, but this time, nah, the internet is onto them. And if you're new here, I'm Ari. I was the star in my own New York Times hit piece. Unfortunately, 0 out of 10, do not recommend. But if you are here, I hope you go grab a snack, stay hydrated, and we're going to get back into this absolute mess of an article, diving in because we've got a lot to talk about. But before we start, make sure you're subscribed, ring that notification bell so you don't miss a thing. And here we go. You're watching the Little Miss Jacob Show. I'm about to teach you guys a master class. All right, here's where we left off. It was about point 16. So we're halfway through the article with about 33 little clips I took from it, okay? So this is the New York Times. They say Mr. Baldoni, co-chair of the film studio, and Jamie Heath, the chief executive, are alleged to have engaged in a sexually inappropriate conduct. Our client is willing to forego a more formal HR process in favor of everyone returning to work and finishing the film as long as the set is safe moving forward, her legal team wrote to the studio. She detailed her complaints during a meeting with Mr. Baldoni, Mr. Heath, and other producers in January, according to the legal filing. New York Times. She claimed Mr. Baldoni had improvised unwanted kissing and discussed his sex life, including encounters in which he said he may not have received consent. Mr. Heath had shown her a video of his wife naked, she said, and he had watched Miss Lively in her trailer when she was topless and having body makeup removed, despite her asking him to look away. Interesting. She said that both men repeatedly entered her makeup trailer uninvited while she was undressed, including when she was breastfeeding. It's the first time I actually caught that, surprisingly, is that it doesn't say that she didn't let Heath into her makeup trailer while she was topless, which I strongly doubt. She was just like out there in the open, but that he didn't look away. Are you guys picking up on that? That he had watched Miss Lively in her trailer when she was topless and having makeup removed despite her asking him to look away. Interesting. But she didn't say, like, I didn't want him in there. Anyway, let's break down the New York Times framing tricks. Oh, okay. So this is the part where the New York Times gets real creative with their storytelling. We're going to do this piece by piece because, once again, they are implying a whole lot without actually proving anything. First off, let's talk about that first sentence. Mr. Baldoni, co-chair of the film studio, and Jamie Heath, the chief executive, are alleged to have engaged in in sexually inappropriate conduct. I don't know if I'm going to get in trouble on YouTube for saying. Can you say sexually? I don't know. It's like I don't know the rules, or I'm learning the rules. Anyway, alleged. That's the magic word here. The New York Times loves this word because it lets them say anything without proving anything. It's a shield, not a statement of fact. They know most people skim articles and won't realize that alleged means there's no evidence yet, just accusations. But the difference between the New York Times saying alleged and a YouTuber saying alleged is that most of the time, YouTubers have a small or non existent staff and just some producers or literally themselves going and researching these things. It used to be that if an article was in the New York Times, you could really trust it, but we're not there. And this is the New York Times saying alleged when supposedly they had all the text messages to review and they have such thorough investigations before they decide to completely destroy someone. Well, we know that's fake and not true, but we'll keep going. Immediately after that setup, we get this little nugget. Our client is willing to forego a more formal HR process as long as the set is safe moving forward. Ah, what? If the accusations were as serious as the New York Times is framing them, why would she be willing to just skip a formal HR investigation? A formal HR complaint would mean actual documentation, witness statements, and a real investigation, which, fun fact, never happened. And why does the New York Times leave out the actual receipts from the lawsuit that contradict this? Well, there was no lawsuit filed yet, okay? There was like no HR complaint, nothing going on at that point. So the other side didn't even have a chance to refute it. That's why Brian Friedman, Baldoni's attorney, was saying that the initial thing that they complained that they filed was not a real lawsuit. So it basically takes away discovery, and which is like where both sides have to turn in their communications. Like it just basically is a one-sided thing and the other side doesn't get to defend itself, right? So they are. Oh, and also the lawsuit filed by Baldoni later just shows them a lot of the time laughing and joking around. So it's just odd, right? Especially because remember, after the complaints, like the 17-point thing that Baldoni signed, there was no other issues on set. So anyway, this wasn't the behavior of someone traumatized by a dangerous work environment. It's the behavior of someone keeping up appearances until it's time to flip the script. The improvised kissing claim, another New York Times trick now. The supposed improvised unwanted kissing, which, by the way, is conveniently vague. Where? When? What scene? What context? The article never specifies, even knowing that the movie is out on Netflix, so we can all go check. Why wasn't that important? Because this was a film adaptation of a romance novel where physical intimacy is a core part of the story. If Baldoni went off script, that's one thing. But the New York Times doesn't even bother to provide any context or proof. They just plant the seed in your mind and let you assume the worst. Also, fun fact, Baldoni had an intimacy coordinator on set from day one. But notice how the article doesn't mention that, almost like it would completely dismantle their narrative. I'm going to check the chat because I know we're live. How's it going, guys? Yeah, why didn't she go to her union? That's true. Yeah, somebody said she says she was having body makeup removed, so where is that person? Some people online would say that person exists, but Lively is following due process and not going rogue like um, Baldoni's lawyer. Some would say, well, that person doesn't really want to come forward, most likely. Who knows? Or maybe that person will come forward and say, you know, maybe, maybe she did come, like, maybe he did look. I don't know. It wasn't like, I don't know. We can only speculate, but it does seem that she got people on her side. And the reason why I really connected with this is because if you go back and look at what happened to me, it was basically some influencers at the top, along with Taylor Lorenz, the journalist, who was also at the top. And she and the people at the influencers at the top that wanted control of the project, the TikTok houses, they decided to take me out. So it's like, and there was other people there that went along with it, but they didn't maybe use their names in the article, you know. So that's why I'm saying this is a playbook and you should really pay attention. So, the confession about consent, another misleading setup. She claimed Mr. Baldoni had discussed his sex life, including encounters in which she said he may not have received consent. Hold up. Let's actually think about this. When did this conversation happen? They don't say. What was actually said? They don't say. What was the context? They don't say. The New York Times wants the New York Times wants you to assume that Baldoni just casually confessed to some crime in the middle of a workplace conversation. But in reality, this could have been literally anything: a discussion about gray areas in dating culture, a conversation about how people interpret consent differently, a hypothetical example. We have no idea. In my mind, it's likely Baldoni saying, hey, times are different. When I went to college, I didn't say to a woman, excuse me, before we do the dirty, may I have consent? Raise his hand. But he probably does that now, or he would do that if he was dating, because that's the kind of guy Baldoni is. And at this point, they don't need to prove it to you. They just need to make you feel like he's guilty. Like, who would say that? Who would say they don't need consent? But do you get how you can't have a conversation? Like, I could see somebody having a conversation just like I explained. Then the Jamie Heath allegations, twisted beyond recognition. All right. These are even more ridiculous. The naked wife video claim. Okay. But was this a birthing video? As we now know, because that's what Baldoni's lawsuit now says. And Lively herself has shared videos of her giving. No, have she shared videos of her giving birth? No, she hasn't. I don't know. My script writer here is messed up. But by the way, guys, I spent about 2 hours in the writing room with ChatGPT. So these are my thoughts, but they are compiled with about 2,000 pages of research from this legal filing. So, and I honestly didn't read through it before I started because I've been trying to do this live for, I don't know, the last 4 or 5 days. If any of you guys have been paying attention, like I keep changing the day that we're going to be going live. So anyway, but suddenly in this context, it's being framed as something sinister. Yeah, we already know that the birthing video thing was not a video that was shown. It was a still image of the first frame of a video where Heath's wife was not naked, but just in this kind of like beautiful birthing moment. And I think that the reason why they showed her that was not to be like, hey, we know that you've had children, but it's to be like, this is what we want it to look like. No woman giving birth by nature of what it is, can see what the other people are seeing. Do you get what I'm saying? So even if she's had 10 children, it doesn't matter. She's never been viewing the situation happening in real time from the point of view of what the screen is gonna be on film. Do you get what I'm saying? Anyway, the topless trailer claim. So Heath was allegedly watching her while she was undressed, or did he accidentally see something when he walked in and then immediately look away? As Baldoni's lawsuit states. I mean, how many people have ever gone to a restroom somewhere and someone accidentally pushes the door open, like maybe the lock wasn't? Do you go around and claim that person was a looky loo? Of course not. Because those are very different things. And the New York Times conveniently doesn't clarify anything. Repeatedly entering the trailer. Again, this is vague as hell. Was this during costume fittings, hair and makeup checks? Was there any intent here? Or is this just normal Hollywood set behavior that's being reframed into something nefarious? If Lively felt unsafe, why was she still on set? Why was she still working with Baldoni and texting him casually? This was not a hostage situation. She had every opportunity to report this to a real HR complaint, leave the production, or escalate things immediately, but she didn't. Here's the takeaway on this particular part. This is classic media manipulation. At the end of the day, the entire paragraph is a masterclass in framing. The New York Times takes accusations with zero proof, vague open-ended claims, normal workplace interactions on a film set that could easily be twisted, and they present it in a way that makes Baldoni and Heath look like monsters. And that's how they win. They don't prove anything, they just imply it and let the internet do the rest. But this time, we're not falling for it. Next part. In agreeing to the terms that Miss Lively sought, Wayfair acknowledged that although our perspective differs in many aspects, ensuring a safe environment for all is paramount, according to her legal complaint, the New York Times says. By the spring, Ms. Lively told people she worked with that the men's behavior had improved with the new protections, but she was now in a creative battle with them. With the support of Sony, the film distributor, she made her own cut of the movie, bringing in editors and a composer and adding one of Miss Swift's songs. In the end, Sony and Wayfair went with Miss Lively's cut, and she got a producer credit. Just make sure that they tap her on the back there. This creative battle was actually a hostile takeover. The part where the New York Times magically shifts the narrative from Baldoni and Heath that are dangerous men to actually this was all about creative control. Like, did you hear that? I'm going to say it again. They magically shift the narrative from Baldoni and Heath are dangerous men to actually this was all about creative control. Like, do they even realize they're contradicting themselves? We'll go through this step by step. The fake acknowledgement play. In agreeing to the terms that Miss Lively Wayfair acknowledged that although our perspectives differ in many aspects, ensuring a safe environment for all is paramount. Okay, first of all, let's clock the framing here. Wayfair did not say, yes, we did something wrong. They said, our perspective differs. You know what that means in Hollywood speak? We think your accusations are BS, but we'll agree to the conditions just to move forward with this damn movie. If Wayfair actually believed Baldoni and Heath were guilty of what Lively is claiming, why would they have kept them on the film? Why wouldn't they have fired them? Because newsflash, they knew this was not about safety. It was about power. There's more people at Wayfair than just Heath and Baldoni, okay? If they were some kind of creeps with there being proof that they were creeps, I think the whole organization would have like taken a beat and been like, hey, maybe we need to reconsider these people. The sudden everything was fine pivot. By the spring, Miss Lively told people she worked with that the men's behavior had improved with the new protections. Oh, so now everything was fine. I thought This was a hostile and unsafe work environment, aka the reason you had to file this complaint. I thought Baldoni and Heath were supposed to be these terrifying, inappropriate monsters. So the studio agrees to some vague safeguards, and suddenly all is well. Interesting. So you see how that alone pokes holes in Lively's entire narrative. Because if her original claims were as serious as the New York Times made them seem earlier in this article, there's no fixing that with a couple HR tweaks. And let's be real, Wayfair already had an intimacy coordinator from day one. The lawsuit receipts contradict this idea that Lively single handedly made the set safer. What actually happened is that she got what she wanted: more power. The real agenda was taking over the film, but she was now in a creative battle with them. Ding, ding, ding. We have arrived at the real reason for all of this drama. It was never about Baldoni being unsafe. It was never about some big misconduct scandal. It was about Lively wanting full creative control. And when she didn't get it, she played the one card that Hollywood is too scared to ignore: accusations of spicy misconduct. This is exactly what Baldoni's lawsuit spells out. The moment Lively got what she wanted, power over the movie, her so-called safety concerns magically disappeared. But instead of calling that out, the New York Times just casually slides it into the article like, oh yeah, by the way, she fought for total control of the film and got what she wanted. And here's the part where they involve Sony. With the support of Sony, the film's distributor, she made her own cut of the movie, bringing in editors and a composer and adding one of Miss Swift's songs. You see what they do there? Powerful people. They're basically saying Sony agrees with her and Swift is with her. Let's talk about how wild that actually is. Lively literally hijacked the film. The lead actress, not the director, made her own version of the movie and then used her Hollywood connections to push it through. She broke in an entirely new post-production team. Do you realize how insane that is? Imagine being a director, crafting a movie, and then watching your lead actress literally redo the entire thing behind your back. She leveraged Taylor Swift. Sony was always going to pick the version with a brand new Taylor Swift song, of course, because duh. And they don't want to be part of some Me Too scandal. Like, at first, I was kind of irritated with Sony, but I get it. They're the studio. It's like the brands that couldn't work with me after the New York Times hit piece. It's not really their fault. It's just kind of the way the cookie crumbles. Until you fix your reputation, we can't really have anything to do with you. At this point, Lively wasn't just a co-star. She was the co-director, co-producer, and co-de facto studio head. And Baldoni completely cut out of his own project. That is not normal, guys. And the New York Times knows that. Oops. I don't know why this thing is still showing. It's been up the whole time. All right. Completely cut out of his own project. Poor Baldoni, right? But the New York Times article doesn't want to talk about how Hollywood works. In the end, Sony and Wayfair went with Miss Lively's cut, and she got a producer credit. First of all, Sony and Wayfair went with Lively's cut, because she had all the leverage. By then, the lawsuit literally says that she threatened to cause even more public damage if they didn't give in. And then the cherry on top, she got a producer credit. Translation, she won. I don't know if I go into it here, but she also sort of forced that on the other side. So suffice to say, this was not about safety, not about misconduct. She took over the set, rewrote the movie, got full creative control, and made sure Baldoni, who had been working on his project for years, wasn't even a factor in the final cut, had to sit in the basement. The takeaway here is that the New York Times is gaslighting you. As I've said before, number one, Lively's safety concerns disappeared the second she got power. Number two, she completely took over control of the movie and erased Baldoni's creative vision. And number three, the New York Times wants you to think this is normal when it's actually unprecedented. And that's why this hit piece is such a joke. The entire first half of the article is like Baldoni and Heath were dangerous. Then halfway through, it just switches to actually Lively just wanted the final cut. And you're like halfway in and you kind of just go with it. You don't get to claim you're the victim of a toxic workplace while simultaneously becoming the most powerful person on set. But of course, the New York Times won't say that part out loud. Ay, ay, ay. So I have like some kind of fun, like clown music. Hang on. And I'm thinking of playing it like lightly when we read the New York Times stuff so that like everybody can tell when the New York Times is talking and when I'm talking. What do you guys think about that? Let's see. It's my own version of the Curb Your Enthusiasm sort of style. All right, I just don't have it added in here yet, so bear with me. Add music. How's everybody's Friday going? I feel like so torn because I just want to be covering this full time like my friends. And I've been lucky enough that a bunch of people have invited me on their streams to talk about it, but I do run a full-time startup, which, you know, a lot of people that I love and who care about me are always like, don't get distracted because you're so like, you know, you're good at what you do, but don't get distracted but you know, in the end, I do feel like I'm getting my name out there more to more people. And I do feel like if you were to hire somebody to do short form video content for you, like for social media, or you were to refer somebody, I do feel like my audience would refer me. So, you know, there's that. And I'll tell you, since I'm looking for this little music, I'm telling you, it'll be easier to like decipher when I'm talking and when what the New York Times is saying. I think, especially when I make shorts out of this. But what I was going to say is like the reason why I think most business owners, like small and medium sized businesses, need social media. I'm sorry, need short form video is because you can't really grow on social media anymore with photos. Like you used to just be able to post photos on Instagram and like that would be good for your business. But if you don't do short form content, it's almost impossible to grow. And so that's what my business handles. And we do a really good job at it. So, anyway, all right. So let's test the sound. How's that? My voice, guys. When I'm only going to play this when it's the New York Times because they kind of played this clown music when they were talking about Justin Baldoni's, when they were talking about his, what's it called? His podcast. They were making fun of him, so I'm going to make fun of them. Good sweatshirt title. Mean Girls, what you going to do when they come for you? That's a good one. My startup is creatorgenius.com. And we make short form content for small and medium sized businesses. Oh, and also, guys, all the sweatshirts I wear, most of them are available on Amazon. But you can go to littlemissjacob.com and find the link for everything that I have on there. I just added some new cry bullies. So, all right. Next New York Times part. As the film release neared, Miss Lively and other cast members informed Sony and Wayfair that they would not do any appearances alongside Mr. Baldoni. So did Miss Hoover, the author, who had her own dissatisfactions with him and had become more upset after he told her about Miss Lively's allegations. According to text messages from Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath. Now, how do I stop the music? Oh, there we go. Okay, I gotta have this like ready to go, apparently. The isolation tactic, how smear campaigns really work. It's also how narcissists work. Okay, besties, this is a textbook example of one of the most effective smear campaign tactics, isolation. When you want to take someone down, you don't just attack them directly. You cut them off from their allies, their industry, and their ability to defend themselves. That's exactly what's happening here. Miss Lively and other cast members informed Sony and Wayfair that they would not do any appearances alongside Mr. Baldoni. Oh, how convenient. The woman who just took over the movie now suddenly doesn't want to be seen with the original director and co chair of the studio. Oh my goodness. This is a calculated move. It's not just about not wanting to share a stage with him, it's about sending a message to the industry and to everyone reading the article. Baldoni is toxic. If you support him, you're next. And then they weaponize other people's grievances. So did Miss Hoover, the author, who had her own dissatisfactions with him. What are those dissatisfactions? Classic move. Find someone who already has issues with the person you're trying to cancel, or don't even point out what those issues are. Maybe she just had an issue with the fact that Blake Lively was upset with him, and pull them into your narrative. Hoover wasn't even part of the original accusations. I don't even know if she was on set. I don't think she was. But now she's another name on the list. This is how these things spiral out of control. The original complaint, which was vague and unproven to begin with, now turns into multiple women having problems with Baldoni, when in reality, those issues were completely unrelated or non-existent. We don't even know what they actually are. We're just going to take the New York Times word for it. Yeah, nah. And had become more upset after he told her about Miss Lively's allegations, and had become more upset after he told her about Miss Lively's allegations, according to text messages from Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath. You know what's funny there is I'm not necessarily defending Colleen here, but they said she had become more upset after he told her about Miss Lively's allegations. Okay, what does that mean? Does that mean she was upset because it was a lie, or does that mean she was upset at Mr. Baldoni? They don't clarify again. According to text messages from Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath. Also, remember that they make you think that the New York Times subpoenaed, or the Lively side subpoenaed Wayfair's communications, but they didn't. They only have the PR people's communications. So by framing it according to text messages from Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath, it makes it seem like they have all the text messages between Baldoni and Heath, but they don't, as far as I know. Okay. So Baldoni tells Hoover about the allegations, probably an attempt to be transparent, because, right, you got to get ahead of it. That's what I would do. And that's what I did do. And instead of considering the context, the New York Times just drops this in like, oh, by the way, she got even madder at him. Lesson of the day. If the media wants you gone, even defending yourself will be used against you. Baldoni was damaged if he did, damaged if he didn't. I think that's what to say. Baldoni was damned if he did, damned if he didn't. If he hadn't told Hoover, they would have said he was hiding things. Since he did tell her, now they're using it as more proof that people were upset with him. Ah, gosh, this sounds so familiar. They did the same thing to me. This is manipulation 101. You take neutral or completely normal behavior and reframe it to make someone look guilty. What did they do to me? She demanded unconscionable fees, 20%. I demanded that I get paid for my work and I not be taken advantage of and have to work for free when 20% is industry standard. Okay, New York Times. I guess I should have just said, all right, well, I'm sorry. I guess I'll work for free next time. Like a person that gets taken advantage of. Anyway, this wasn't about safety. It was about misconduct. By this point, Lively had already won. She had full creative control, producer credit, a version of the movie as final cut, and later got to do the premiere all with all her little friends around. She got to be the popular one. How many she didn't really say what she calls the other people in the story, like Ryan and Taylor are her dragons. What are the other people? Her gremlins? What do you think the other people are? But that wasn't enough. The final step was to make Baldoni radioactive, completely isolate him so he wouldn't even get a seat at his own movie's press tour. And that's the real power of a media backed smear campaign. They don't just attack your reputation, they erase you. That's also what they did to me. I was at the forefront of the TikTok gold rush. I was the first one there. Everybody else made out as multi-millionaires. And I was pretty much destitute. Didn't know how I was going to pay my rent. Anyway, by the first week of August, oh, hang on. By the first week of August, Baldoni had retained Miss Nathan, who had worked with high profile clients, including Mr. Depp, whose ex wife, Amber Heard, accused him of physical abuse. This year, after a decade at the New York consultancy Hiltzik Strategies, Miss Nathan started her own firm, Tag PR. Its major stakeholder is a company run by the entertainment industry executive Scooter Braun. An initial planning document sent to Wayfarer Mr. Baldoni on August 2nd, Ms. Nathan suggested media talking points, including that Ms. Lively used an imbalance of power to take control of the film. That's the New York Times Swiftie baiting tactic. Oh, I see what you did there, New York Times. We already clocked the guilt by association smear with Johnny Depp, but the Scooter Braun mention, that was deliberate Swiftie bait. Step 1, activate the Swifties against Baldoni. Ms. Nathan started her own firm, Tag PR. Its majority stakeholder is a company run by the entertainment industry executive Scooter Braun. Scooter Braun. Translation: Hey Swifties, look, Baldoni is connected to Scooter Braun. Attack, attack, attack. This had nothing to do with the lawsuit. Braun isn't even involved. Braun isn't working with Baldoni. Braun probably doesn't even know at this point what's going on. Well, he probably knows now. But the New York Times threw his name in anyway because they know Swifties and Lively stands will see it and immediately turn against Baldoni without even questioning it. And it's not even subtle because early in the article, they casually mentioned that Lively put a Taylor Swift song in the film, which, let's be real, was probably just a strategic move to get Sony on her side. Step 2, framing Baldoni's defense as dirty PR. Ms. Nathan suggested media talking points, including that Ms. Lively used an imbalance of power to take control of the film. So let me get this straight. Lively actually did take control of the film. She forced her own cut. She erased Baldoni from his project, blah, blah, blah. But when Baldoni's team points out objective reality, suddenly it's framed as PR spin. Lesson of the day. When the media calls something talking points, they're trying to discredit it, even when it's literally just the truth. And by the way, this was not a plan that Baldoni's team said was put in action. It was like plan B, plan D, plan if everything hits the fan plan. And here's the double standard. Baldoni hired a PR team equals sinister, suspicious, shady. Lively feeding the New York Times a hit piece months in advance equals totally fine, nothing to see here. This is not journalism. This is a PR war, and the New York Times is actively choosing sides. And they don't care. They don't care that a person and many people's businesses, women's businesses are taken down. They're talking about supporting women when they're completely annihilating how many women-owned businesses here? The New York Times knows exactly what they're doing. They are manufacturing outrage, just like they do best. They knew the Swifties would eat this up. They knew the mention of Scooter Braun would get them foaming at the mouth. They knew this article would be weaponized on social media before anyone even read the lawsuit. So, next time you see a name drop in an article, ask yourself, does this actually matter or is it just bait? Can you hear the music now? It's going off and on. But Mr. Baldoni wanted more. Oh, that's weird. Well, I don't know. I can hear it, so it's probably just really low. But Mr. Baldoni wanted more. Not in love with the document they sent, he responded in a text exchange that included Miss Abel and Mr. Heath. Not sure I'm feeling the protection I felt on the call. Miss Abel relayed his frustration to Ms. Nathan. I think you guys need to be tough and show the strength of what you guys can do in these scenarios. He wants to feel like she can be buried. Of course, but when we send over documents, we can't just send over the work we will or could do because that could get us in a lot of trouble, Ms. Nathan responded, adding, we can't write we will destroy her. Moments later, she said, imagine if a document saying all the things that he wants ends up in the wrong hands. We can bury anyone, she wrote. Oh, the classic line. The New York Times' favorite trick, selective quoting to create a villain. Oh, this is the moment that they've been waiting for. Their so-called smoking gun. The big bad Baldoni caught plotting in the shadows. Except once again, the New York Times is playing word games to make this sound way more sinister than it actually is. Step 1, selective quoting to create suspicion. Not in love with the document they sent. Not sure I'm feeling the protection I felt on the call, says Baldoni. Here's another lesson for you guys. If a journalist only gives you a tiny snippet of someone's words, they're usually hiding the full context. What document? They don't say. What was discussed on their call? They don't say. Protection from what? They don't say. They want you to assume Baldoni is saying, I need protection because I'm guilty. But that's just as likely that he's saying, but it's just as likely that he's saying, I need stronger PR because I'm being falsely accused. Bro. The New York Times deliberately leaves this vague so your brain fills in the worst possible scenario. Step 2, the bury her text. How the New York Times spins words. He wants to feel like she can be buried. Here's where context is everything. Is Baldoni saying, I want to ruin Blake Lively's life? Or is he saying, I need to know that my PR team can handle, this false narrative against me? Considering that Lively had already been coordinating with the New York Times for months, it's not unreasonable for Baldoni to want a PR team that can actually encounter the hit piece he knew was coming. But here's where the New York Times plays dirty. Instead of explaining that this was a PR strategy conversation, they immediately follow it with the most incriminating sounding messages possible to make it sound like Baldoni is personally plotting something malicious. The we can bury anyone text. Who actually said it? We can bury anyone, she wrote. The New York Times wants you to believe that this is proof of a sinister conspiracy. But let's actually look at who said what. Who sent the message? Melissa Nathan, a PR person. Was Baldoni in this group chat? Nope. Did Baldoni say anything like this? Nope. So what actually happened? A PR rep used some dramatic language in a private conversation with other PR reps. Was it a bad choice of words? Maybe. Could I see Olivia Pope, the badass fictional PR woman, saying it? Also, yes. Does it prove Baldoni was running a smear campaign? Not even a little bit. Because guess what? PR teams talk like this all the time. Every crisis management firm in Hollywood has probably sent some version of what will control the narrative in a text at some point. That's literally their freaking job, okay? But that leads me to the New York Times ultimate trick, letting readers assume the worst. Think about it. Even like in our own everyday lives, we all assume the worst, don't we? Like, somebody didn't call me back right away. Oh, I lost the deal. Like, we all do that. We do it with ourselves. So, of course, we're going to do it when we're listening to a story. Imagine if a document saying all the things that he wants ends up in the wrong hands. Oh, that sounds super sketchy, right? But what document are we talking about? A legal defense strategy? Yeah, that would be bad in the wrong hands. A reputation management plan? A list of PR responses to the smear campaign against him? They don't really say because they don't want you thinking critically. They want you reacting emotionally. So, what's the lesson? When a journalist shows you part of a conversation but refuses to explain the full context, assume they're hiding something. It's the gotcha moment. All right. Their gotcha moment is a total nothing burger. Baldoni never said he wanted to destroy Lively. The bury anyone line wasn't even from him. This was a PR team talking about doing their job, countering a smear campaign. And the New York Times totally took this totally normal PR conversation, chopped it up, and presented it like a criminal mastermind plot. And that, besties, is how the media manipulates you. It's just funny how they will keep doing it. I couldn't believe that Piers Morgan was like even Piers Morgan doesn't know how to read a smear campaign. Come on, guy. Have me on your show. I'll teach you. 3 days later, Mr. Baldoni texted Miss Abel, flagging a social media thread that accused another celebrity of bullying behavior and had generated 19 million views. This was the Hailey Bieber thread on X. This is what we would need, she wrote. Miss Nathan soon floated proposals to hire contractors to dominate social media through full social account takedowns by starting threads of theories and generally working to change the narrative. All of this will be most importantly untraceable, she wrote. Oh, here we go. Another gotcha moment that's actually just standard industry PR being spun into something sinister. How many times are they going to do this? This is so tired. Here's the New York Times pretending like social media strategy is a crime. 3 days later, Mr. Baldoni texted Miss Abel, flagging a social media thread that accused another celebrity of bullying behavior and had generated 19 million views. This is what we would need, Baldoni wrote. Noticing a viral trend and saying, we need something like this is not a crime. It's called understanding the internet, besties. Baldoni is literally just pointing out a highly successful example of a public opinion shifting online and saying, if we want to fight back against the smear campaign, this is the level of reach we would need. Why is this being framed as suspicious? Oh, right. Because only Baldoni's PR is bad. Lively feeding the New York Times a hit piece, smart, strategic, brave. Baldoni wanting a viral response to somebody bullying him, evil, manipulative. Make it make sense. Step 2, the New York Times. PR firms exist, and this is literally their only job, but New York Times doesn't want you to believe that. They say Miss Nathan soon floated proposals to hire contractors to dominate social media through full social account takedowns by starting threads of theories and generally working to change the narrative. Yeah, that's what PR teams do. Change the narrative equals every publicist's literal job description. I mean, yeah, I don't get it. And the other thing too here is that the New York Times really thought they had something here. Let's be clear about what actually happened and how the New York Times wants you to perceive it. Here's what Baldoni actually said and the New York Times spin. This is what we would need, he wrote. What the New York Times wants you to think. Baldoni was sitting in a dark room, stroking his evil mustache, plotting an orchestrated hit job on Lively while fixing his man bun. What actually happened? According to his lawyer, Brian Friedman, Baldoni said they would need other people, not them, to connect the dots that Lively was being a bully, which is hilarious because that's exactly what happened and what we're basically doing right now. Hello, Mr. Scotland. I see you in the chat. The truth was already out there. No PR machine was needed. At this point, Blake Lively had already pissed off the entire internet all by herself. Her weird, condescending press tour was already getting dragged. She said the little bump thing, totally being mean to a journalist. The florals quote memed into oblivion. People were rewatching her old videos and realizing, oh, wait, she's kind of been like this for a while. Did Baldoni's team need to create a narrative? No, the internet was already doing it for them. But this is the New York Times standard on shaping the narrative. Ms. Nathan soon floated proposals to hire contractors to dominate social media through full social account takedowns by starting threads of theories and generally working to change the narrative. So let me get this straight. Lively leaking a hit piece to the New York Times, investigative journalism. That's what they're calling it. But Baldoni wanting social media to push back against the false accusations, a sinister smear campaign. Make it make sense, guys. All of this will be mostly untraceable, they say. Ooh, spooky. That sounds so scandalous when you phrase it like that, New York Times. Here's a reality check. This is literally how crisis PR works. Always has, always will. You guys know that now. PR firms don't slap their logos on a viral campaign. No, no one officially takes credit for controlling a narrative. It's the entire point of reputation management. You do it behind the scenes. Are we really going to pretend this is some unique evil Baldoni operation when this is how Hollywood PR has functioned for decades? Here's the takeaway. The New York Times is selling you a victim, not telling you the truth. Did Baldoni create the Blake is a mean girl narrative? Nope, the internet did that. Did Baldoni want people to notice what was already happening? Of course. It's not a crime. It's common sense. Did the New York Times conveniently ignore that Lively's team was doing the exact same thing in the opposite direction? Obviously. Here's a lesson. When the media shows you one side and their talking points, but ignores the other side's PR machine, you're being manipulated again. Here we go. We're at point 22, besties. Thanks for hanging out with me. I'm going to the Shania Twain concert tonight, so gotta be done in the next hour. Here we go. The group was working with Mr. Wallace, whose company, Street Relations, offers services ranging from public relations to more opaque crisis management. He is somewhat of an enigmatic figure with very little digital trail. But court records show that his clients have included Paramount Pictures and the YouTube personality Aiden Ross. And in a since deleted LinkedIn profile, Mr. Wallace described himself as a hired gun with a proprietary formula for defining artists and trends. A proprietary formula? Why is that so evil? All right. The classic villain introduction. The New York Times is really working overtime to make this guy sound like a character from a spy thriller. He is a somewhat enigmatic figure with very little digital trail. Translation: we couldn't find anything shady about him, so we'll just say he's mysterious and let your imagination run wild. Newsflash, crisis PR people don't have a big public presence for a reason. Their job is to work behind the scenes. If you're good at crisis management, you don't want your name all over the internet. Would they prefer he have an active TikTok where he dances to Taylor Swift songs while explaining how to clean up Hollywood scandals? But court records show that his clients have included Paramount Pictures and the YouTube personality Aiden Ross. Wasn't Aiden Ross the guy dancing with Trump on the campaign trail? Yeah. I think they wanted you to know that. Lesson of the day. When journalists name drop random people, always ask why. What does Paramount have to do with Baldoni? Nothing. What does Aiden Ross have to do with Baldoni? Also nothing. What does this add to the story? Nothing. This is filler. It's a cheap trick to throw in recognizable names to make you think something shady is going on. Then the since deleted LinkedIn trick. Oh, so the New York Times has the Wayback Machine. Cool. The girl that went after me, Taylor Lorenz, she's had her whole internet history wiped from the Wayback Machine. And allegedly her uncle started the Wayback Machine's like movie division or like video division or something. Anyway, they can have their stuff deleted, but they'll always find yours. In a since deleted LinkedIn profile, Mr. Wallace describes himself as a hired gun with a proprietary formula for defining artists and trends. Ooh, spooky. His LinkedIn was deleted. Reality check. People delete LinkedIn profiles all the time, especially if they think, if they work in crisis PR and suddenly they find themselves in the middle of a media firestorm, or if they just like know that things have changed, like in the last 5 years even. So let's be real. The New York Times itself is probably why he deleted it, right? They really started sneaking around. Because when the New York Times paints a target on your back, the first thing you do is limit your digital footprint. Yeah, you go in and you start saying, like, oh, I don't want anything to be taken the wrong way. Also, hired gun is literally a slang term for consultants and PR people. It's not some secret assassin for a hire statement, but the New York Times is playing it up to make it sound more dramatic. By the way, Taylor Lorenz, the hack journalist that attacked me, she requoted, I forget what article, called her the Bob Woodward of the TikTok generation. Okay, excuse me. I almost threw up. Anyway, they couldn't find anything bad on Jed Wallace, so they just made him sound mysterious. They threw in some random name drops for effect. They made deleting a LinkedIn sound like a criminal cover-up. What's the lesson here? If a journalist spends more time making someone sound shady than actually proving wrongdoing, it's because they have nothing. All right. The August 6th premiere brought the first wave of press coverage questioning what happened during the filming. A Hollywood Reporter story speculated about a rift between Ms. Lively and Mr. Baldoni after TikTokers noticed that the two stars didn't pose for photographs together and that Ms. Lively and other cast members didn't follow Mr. Baldoni on Instagram. The unfollow situation is what everyone is pointing at. Seemingly, that something is much bigger under the surface. As why would they all unfollow? Mr. Baldoni said in a text, which we don't even know who it's to. We flagged to Jed and his team as well, a tag PR executive added. All right. Now this is just embarrassing. The New York Times is out here acting like a TikTok unfollow button is hard evidence in a lawsuit. Hollywood Reporter story speculated about a rift between Ms. Lively and Mr. Baldoni after TikTokers noticed that the two stars didn't pose for photographs, blah, blah, blah. Translation, we don't actually have proof of anything, so let's just let TikTokers connect the dots for us. Hang on, there's a point to what I'm saying here. There's going to be irony. This is how the modern media works. They don't even have to prove a rift existed. They just report on the speculation and let it snowball. But we do know that there was a rift. But they want you to, be like, well, there's other people that thought there was a rift. So this is the only thing we really know. Actual journalism. Here's documented evidence of a problem between Baldoni and Lively. Here's what the New York Times is doing. Oh my God, did you see that Lively didn't follow Baldoni? That seems sus. Like really hardcore reporting. The unfollow situation is what everyone is pointing at, seemingly that something is much bigger under the surface as to why they would all unfollow, Mr. Baldoni said. Yeah, no kidding, Justin. He's not saying, oh my God, they caught us. He's saying, well, this is the narrative people are running with, and it's obviously going to affect the PR of this movie and make me look bad. So what's the lesson? When the media tries to make basic public relations strategy sound sinister, they're just reaching. The New York Times is framing PR strategy as covering up the truth. We flagged to Jed and his team as well, a tag PR executive added. Translation, we noticed the internet was running wild with rumors, so we let our PR team know. That's literally like all that's going on here, which is exactly what any business brand or public figure would do, you guys. Every single major celebrity, influencer company has an entire team, hopefully, if they're big enough, monitoring social media sentiment. If McDonald's saw a viral tweet saying their fries were poisoned, they would flag it to their team too. This is not a cover up, it's basic brand management. The New York Times is just repackaging gossip as news. It's okay for them to do it, but just wait till I tell you what they do. There's no actual evidence of a rift at this point, just TikTokers speculating about Instagram unfollows. Baldoni, oh, hang on, my boyfriend's calling. Oh, I hate having to send him to voicemail. All right, sorry. Baldoni acknowledging that people are running with the narrative isn't proof of anything. It's just him being aware of public perception. Flagging something to a PR team is literally what PR teams exist for. So what's the lesson here? When a journalist presents online gossip as part of a serious news story, they are selling you a narrative, not facts. But here is the fun update I couldn't wait to tell you guys about. Obviously, everyone knows how the story has taken the world by storm, especially independent media people like us. We've been digging into receipts, researching what actually happened, and catching the New York Times in their own contradictions. And guess what? The New York Times hates that. Pay close attention to how the New York Times repeat this because it's important. Pay close attention to how the New York Times loathes you. The same people they propped up in December, the internet sleuths, the viral threads, the TikTok theories, are now suddenly beneath them. Because here's what happened. After Baldoni filed his defamation lawsuit in January, people started digging into the New York Times reporting, and they found something that the Times really didn't want to explain. The New York Times published Lively's civil rights complaint with the timestamp of December 10th, 2024. But Lively didn't actually file it until December 18th. Then people checked the HTML source code of the New York Times article and found a reference to 2024-1031, which suggests the New York Times had access to this document months before it was ever filed. Translation: the New York Times wasn't just reporting on a legal complaint, that's the theory. They had it early. They had it before it was even filed, which means they weren't just covering the story, they were part of it. Well, duh. Sorry. I know this because this is what happened to me. They were working on that story for months, but now the public is catching up to them. But now, instead of answering how that happened, the New York Times came out swinging, not at the evidence, but at the people who found it. Mr. Baldoni's lawyers based their erroneous claim on postings by amateur internet sleuths who not surprisingly, are wrong. Let me reread that. This was the New York Times response. Mr. Baldoni's lawyers based their erroneous claims on postings by amateur internet sleuths who, not surprisingly, are wrong. Oh, so now the internet sleuths are just amateurs. That's hilarious because back in December, the New York Times was all too freaking happy to rely on influencers and viral TikTok speculation when it made Baldoni look bad. See that? But when TikTokers speculated about an on-set rift, that was newsworthy. They put it in the New York Times article. But when influencers analyzed Instagram follows like it was, the Watergate break-in, the New York Times thought it was serious journalism. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. So when the influencers analyzed Instagram follows like it was Watergate, the New York Times thought it was serious journalism. When social media ran wild with theories about Baldoni's PR team, the New York Times amplified it in their article. But now that those same internet sleuths have receipts proving that the New York Times had this lawsuit document weeks before it was filed, shut up, peasants. You don't know how Google works. That's what they're saying. The New York Times is condescending to the very people they rely on to spread their narratives. They use you when you push their agenda, but the second you start asking the wrong questions, suddenly You're just some idiot who doesn't understand real journalism. And their weak excuse? The sleuths have noted that a version of the Lively State complaint published by the Times carries the date December 10th, even though the complaint wasn't filed until more than a week later. The problem, that date is generated by Google software and is unrelated to the date when the Times received it and posted it. So now it's just a Google glitch. That's interesting because if Baldoni's PR team blamed a suspicious timestamp on a software bug, the New York Times would be the first to call it shady. Well, duh, of course. The New York Times was working on this behind the scenes long before it dropped. When Lorenz came for me, she was meddling in my business for months before she had everything that she needed to take me out. And this is her playbook. I mean, honestly, just the New York Times digging into me made people not want to even come around me. The difference is this time they got caught. And instead of owning up to it, they're gaslighting the very people who did their job better than they did. They hate you. Honestly, they look down on you. They look down on us, on all of us for having a brain. All right, we're almost done here, guys. Hi, chat. Oops. On August 4th that I'm having reckless thoughts of wanting to plant pieces this week of how horrible Blake Lively is to work with just to get ahead of it. Ms. Nathan replied that she had spoken off the record to an editor at the Daily Mail. By the way, the Daily Mail is like the New York Times arch nemesis. She's ready when we are, Ms. Nathan wrote. A flurry of articles followed the Hollywood Reporter piece. Many made it seem as if the only rift was over creative control. Some journalists had gotten wind of complaints about Mr. Baldoni's behavior, but none of the most serious ones were published. Wait a minute. Remember that. But yeah, maybe they weren't published because people were scared to get a defamation lawsuit, bro. New York Times. But none of the most serious ones were published. Yeah, because most publications don't want to get sued for defamation. Okay. But they put that in like, well, nobody published them. Like it's nefarious. Yeah, they didn't publish them because, oh my God. Anyway, because it wasn't true. He doesn't realize how lucky he is right now, Ms. Nathan texted Ms. Abel. In other exchanges, Ms. Nathan claimed that she had kept allegations against him out of stories, writing in one message that major news outlets were standing down on the HR complaint. God, this part pisses me off. So now, talking to journalists is a scandal? That's rich coming from the same New York Times that was working with Lively's team for months before they dropped their hit piece. The same New York Times that I had to sue for defamation after they completely leveled my business and my life. Let's actually look at what they're saying here. A PR exec vents in a text. I'm having reckless thoughts of wanting to plant pieces this week on how horrible Blake is to work with. Okay, and was the article actually planted? No. Was this just someone blowing off steam in private messages? Yes. Did the New York Times even try to prove that this turned into real coverage? Nope. I mean, how many of us had reckless thoughts? I've had reckless thoughts about Taylor Lorenz for a very long time that I try to, pray to God I'm a Christian and I forgive her. But anyway, but I have had reckless thoughts. Meanwhile, Ms. Nathan, the PR expert, responds by saying she spoke off the record with an editor at the Daily Mail. Groundbreaking, right? What's really happening here? Basic crisis PR. Every single celebrity in studio has had a team talking to the press off the record, shaping angles, and making sure their client doesn't get obliterated in the media. Lively's team was doing the exact same thing, except the New York Times conveniently leaves this part out or just like doesn't really highlight it in this framework. Then we get this. Many made it seem as if the only rift was over creative control. Because that's what the actual evidence supports, right? Baldoni's lawsuit states that Lively took over the movie. She got her own cut, brought her in her own team, forced Sony to use it. That's not PR spin. It seems like that's what happened. There's proof to show that. But the New York Times wants you to believe that Baldoni's PR team just tricked the press into ignoring major accusations, which is funny because if those accusations were so serious, why didn't major outlets run with them? Maybe because they didn't hold up. Then we get the real kicker. He doesn't realize how lucky he is right now, Miss Nathan texted Miss Abel. Lucky, lucky. His movie got hijacked. He was smeared in a New York Times piece. He's been dragged through a PR war against Lively Reynolds and the most popular newspaper in America. But yeah, sure, he's lucky. But he was lucky at the time because none of this had happened. What this really tells us is that Lively's team tried to push these allegations to every major outlet and they wouldn't bite. That's not luck. That's a sign that the evidence wasn't there, but that's all right. I'll still give it to Melissa, Nathan, or whoever was saying that. Now, the New York Times is framing standard PR work as some big conspiracy while ignoring the fact that they were the ones coordinating with Lively's team the whole time. Yikes. Meanwhile, an online backlash against Miss Lively was underway. It is impossible to know how much of the negative publicity was seeded by Miss Nathan, Mr. Wallace, and their team, and how much they noticed and amplified. On August 10th, Kirsti Flaw, a Norwegian entertainment reporter, uploaded to YouTube a 2016 interview in which Miss Lively snapped back when Ms. Flaw commented on her baby bump and remained testy for the rest of the conversation. Ms. Flaw titled it "The Blake Lively Interview That Made Me Want to Quit My Job," and told the Daily Mail that it's time that people behaving badly in Hollywood or anywhere else for that matter gets called out for it. After publication of this article, Ms. Flaw on Sunday contacted the Times and said she had not participated in any orchestrated effort to harm Ms. Lively's reputation. In an email, she said that she had resurfaced the 2016 interview independently this past August. It was neither coordinated nor influenced by anyone associated with the alleged campaign, she wrote. It wasn't the first time she had posted a video aligned with a client of Ms. Nathan. In 2022, in the midst of the Mr. Depp legal battle with Ms. Heard, Ms. Flaw posted clips of her interview with the actor tagged "Justice for Johnny Depp." Oh my God. She, out of the millions of other people that posted in support of Johnny Depp, also posted. That is a pretty far reach, New York Times. Good job. The New York Times just straight up admits that they have zero proof Baldoni's PR team seeded the backlash against Lively. Literally zero, guys. It is impossible to know how much of the negative publicity was seeded by Ms. Nathan, Mr. Wallace, and their team, and how much they noticed and amplified. Translation: we don't actually have evidence that Baldoni's team did anything, but we're going to say it anyway, so you assume they did. They're literally admitting that they have no idea what was organic versus what was orchestrated, but instead of stopping there, they just keep going. On August 10th, Kirsti Flaw, a Norwegian entertainment reporter, uploaded to YouTube. Yeah, everybody saw it. It didn't make Blake look very good, and it made people feel bad that this reporter got bullied. Let me get this straight. A journalist independently uploads an old interview. The video goes viral. The public's reaction is negative towards Lively, and now the New York Times is implying it's all part of some big PR conspiracy. But guess what happened next? Kirsti Flaw herself shut the theory down after publication of the article. Yeah, oops. They didn't even bother calling Kirsti? Nah. Kirsti? I don't know how to say it. But instead of taking that at face value, the New York Times still tries to make it seem shady. It wasn't the first time she had posted a video line with a client. Yeah, she posted about Johnny Depp. There it is. The guilt by association trick. They can't prove Baldoni's team planted anything, and they can't prove Flaw was part of any orchestrated effort because she wasn't. So instead, they try to make her look biased because she once supported Johnny Depp like the rest of the whole freaking world. What does that even have to do with anything? Absolutely nothing. The New York Times could have wrote, "Hey, we're writing this article and, being shady just like we did another time." That's what I'm doing, I guess. Anyway, what does Johnny Depp have to do with anything? Absolutely nothing. But the New York Times is hoping you'll connect the dots that they can't actually prove. This whole situation is pure speculation. They admit they don't know if Baldoni's team was involved, but they write the article as if they were. So reminder, when journalists can't prove something, they'll just make you assume it. During the film rollout, Miss Lively was also accused of being insensitive about domestic violence. The official promotion plan instructed the cast to focus more on the uplifting aspects of the movie than on abuse. and to embrace a floral theme for her character. Her character has a flower shop. In several appearances, she never made reference to domestic violence at all, and she faced criticism when her Betty Boo's beverage company was promoting the film, given the role alcohol can play in abusive relationships. Seeing that blowback, the text messages show Mr. Baldoni and his PR team decided instead to highlight survivors of domestic violence in his interviews and social media. More criticism came when Miss Lively said in an interview that Mr. Reynolds, who had no role in the film, had helped rewrite a scene, prompting snarky comments about the actress leaning on her husband and speculation that she had violated the writer's strike. Oh, Lord. They're so sneaky, aren't they? They make it seem like Baldoni only talked about domestic violence in order to manipulate everybody because he was being framed or because he was being accused by Lively. This section is important because it's a perfect example of how the media subtly shifts blame. Pay attention to how the New York Times frames Lively's PR failures and Baldoni's response. Let's start with what actually happened. Lively was criticized for being insensitive about domestic violence while promoting a movie about domestic violence. The official PR plan told her to focus on uplifting themes and florals instead of the actual abuse storyline. The New York Times doesn't tell you that she was part of the marketing, but anyway. She never even mentioned domestic violence in several appearances. Her Betty Boo's brand was promoting the film, which people called tone deaf because, oh, right, alcohol is a major factor in bad relationships. Translation, Lively's PR team completely miscalculated how to promote this movie, or the marketing team, right? But watch how the New York Times subtly protects her while making Baldoni look calculated. Seeing that blowback, the text messages show Mr. Baldoni and his PR team decide instead to highlight survivors. See, I don't know, maybe that's the only real defamatory piece here, that they said they decide instead to highlight. Oh, but they're going to say instead of Lively. Yeah. Huh. So let me get this straight. Lively ignored the abuse angle, got dragged for it, and Baldoni pivoted to actually talking about survivors. But he didn't pivot. He was always talking about survivors from day one, since the day he reached out to Colleen Hoover. But somehow this is framed as strategic damage control on the part of Baldoni. And when the article presents one person's mistake as an oopsie, but another person's response as tactical, they're controlling the narrative. Then we get another PR nightmare. Lively's interview slip-up. More criticism came when Ms. Lively said in an interview that Miss Reynolds had no role, and then he wrote parts, whatever, and violated the writer's strike. Well, this was completely self-inflicted too. She openly admitted that Reynolds, who wasn't involved in the film at all, helped rewrite a scene. People immediately clocked that this could have been a violation of the writer's strike. She got dragged online for relying on her husband's influence. Again, Lively's own words caused the backlash. The funny thing is, too, is she told Baldoni allegedly in these messages that, she wrote the scene. She's already a proven liar if those tweets are true. Notice how the New York Times presents this as she faced criticism instead of actually holding her accountable. When Baldoni's PR team tries to highlight survivors in response to Lively's bad press, that's sneaky, even though he was highlighting them from day one. When Lively completely fumbles her own interview and drags her husband into it, that's just more criticism. This is how media bias works. They report the facts while controlling how you feel about them. All right, we're on 27 of 30 points about. It is unclear exactly how Mr. Wallace operated. There are references in emails to social manipulation and proactive fan posting, and text messages cite efforts to boost and amplify online content that was favorable to Mr. Baldoni or critical to Miss Lively. "We are crushing it on Reddit," Mr. Wallace told Miss Nathan, according to a text message she sent Miss Abel on August 9th. The next day, one of Miss Nathan's employees texted, "We've started to see a shift on social due largely to Jed and his team's effort to shift the narrative," Ms. Nathan wrote to Ms. Abel, "and socials are really, really ramping up in his favor. She must be furious. It's actually sad because it shows you how people really want to hate on women. When a TikTok sleuth started asking questions about Mr. Baldoni, Miss Abel texted that this girl is on a very dangerous crusade. The New York Times wants you to think Baldoni's team was running a psyop. Oh no, people online started questioning Blake Lively and supporting Baldoni. It must be a conspiracy. Let's break down how the New York Times is trying to make total normal PR strategy again sound like sinister operation. First, notice how they start with, it is unclear how Mr. Wallace operated. Translation, we have no proof that Wallace did anything shady, but we're just going to make you assume he did again. Then they throw in the scary sounding words, social manipulation, proactive fan posting, boost and amplify content, which, by the way, is literally what every single PR marketing firm, brand, politician, celebrity, me does on social media. If you've ever liked, shared, or retweeted something that supports your opinion, congratulations, you've engaged in a social manipulation campaign by their definition. Did Mr. Wallace sign the 17-point demand list that Wayfair signed? No. So then why does this matter? This is where the framing gets ridiculous. Lively had a 17-point list of demands that Wayfair had to follow, including who could say what about her. But let me ask you this. If my friend signs a contract saying she won't gossip about her ex-husband, does that mean I can't say something about him? No. That contract doesn't apply to me. Same logic here. Wallace wasn't bound by Lively's deal with Wayfair, so if he boosted content that was critical of her, which, by the way, he says he didn't, that's not a conspiracy. That's just the internet. Wallace denies wrongdoing, but the New York Times wants you to assume that he basically owns a bot farm. We are crushing it on Reddit, Mr. Wallace told Ms. Nathan, according to a text she sent Ms. Abel. Translation: people aren't blindly believing the New York Times, the Lively narrative, and that's a problem. This is why the New York Times needs you to assume Wallace was running a bot farm, because if you actually stop and think, wait, maybe people just saw the receipts and changed their minds, the New York Times loses its mind, right? And so does everybody supporting Lively. Then we get to the best part, and socials are really ramping up in his favor. She must be furious. It's actually sad. It just shows you have people really want to hate on women. Oh, so now it's just sexism? Okay, like, yeah, it is sad. It's sad that people, and who knows what that TikToker was saying. Maybe she was saying things that weren't part of like what Lively did. I don't know. But when Lively was getting praised and Baldoni was getting dragged, that was just public opinion. But the second it shifts the other way, it's misogyny. Let's be real. People didn't just start questioning Lively because of some secret PR operation. They started questioning her because of, well, her. And Wallace, Nathan, Abel are exactly the kind of people that the New York Times hates, because they know how to amplify things that the New York Times wants to bury and powerful people want to bury. The New York Times doesn't want Reddit shaping the conversation. The New York Times doesn't want TikTok users questioning their framing or Lively's framing. The New York Times wants to control the narrative, not you, not the internet, and definitely not your independent thoughts, which is why they need you to think Wallace, Nathan, and Abel are villains. Because if the internet can think for itself, the New York Times loses its grip on public perception. Here's the takeaway. This has nothing to do with PR tactics. The real issue is that the New York Times hates losing control of the story, and so does apparently Blake Lively. When they shape public opinion, it's journalism. When Reddit, TikTok, and social media shape public opinion, it's manipulation. And let's not forget, Wallace isn't just denying wrongdoing. He is suing Blake Lively now. Aw. Thank you, Koala T. Hi, Ari. I love seeing you on Jeff's channel. Thanks for covering this. Oh, I miss Jeff. Shout out to Jeff. This would have been so fun to cover with him. Oh, I love him. Okay. All right. He's suing Blake Lively now. Added to the list. And good for him. Because when the New York Times wants to destroy someone, it doesn't matter if they actually did anything wrong. They just need them to look guilty. And you know what? Sometimes suing is the only way to get your side of the story out in a legal framework that people will actually listen to. All right. Throughout the text messages, Mr. Baldoni encourages the PR team, sometimes flagging social media posts for them to use. On August 15th, he proposes flipping the narrative on a positive story about Miss Lively and her husband by using their own words against them. Other times, he appears to vacillate, seeking assurances about the tactics being deployed. When he notices a tabloid article critical of Ms. Lively, he sends a worried text. How can we say somehow that we're not doing any of this? It looks like we were trying to take her down. On another occasion, he wondered whether they were deploying fake bot accounts on social media. I can fully confirm we do not have bots, Miss Nathan wrote, adding that any digital team would be too intelligent to utilize something so obvious. Mr. Wallace's operation, she wrote, is doing something very specific in terms of what they do. I know Jamie and Jed connected on this. Mr. Baldoni, Miss Nathan, and others on the team claimed in their text exchanges that Ms. Lively was using her own public relations team to create bad press about Mr. Baldoni, but cited no evidence to support those claims. By mid-August, the team was reveling in the damage to Ms. Lively's image. The New York Times wants you to believe Baldoni is a mastermind, even when he's clearly hesitant and doesn't want Blake Lively to look bad because it makes his own film look bad. This one is good. The New York Times is trying to paint Baldoni as some kind of evil puppet master, but when you actually read his text, he's literally second-guessing everything. They frame Baldoni as aggressive, then immediately show he wasn't. On August 15th, he proposes flipping the narrative on a positive story about Miss Lively and her husband by using their own words against them. I don't understand. Translation, he wanted to point out contradictions in Lively and Reynolds' own statements. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so that's just normal response when someone is publicly attacking you. The New York Times wants you to think that this is some devious tactic, but when they literally did the same thing to Baldoni in their own article. Now watch how quickly the narrative shifts. Other times he appears to vacillate, seeking assurances about the tactics being deployed. So which is it? Is he a ruthless PR villain or is he uncomfortable with the strategy? Because this doesn't sound like a man running a smear campaign. How can we say somehow that we're not doing any of this? It looks like we're trying to take her down. Reminder, when someone actually wants to take someone down, they don't stop to worry about how it looks, usually. This is a perfect example of how the New York Times manipulates readers. When Baldoni questions the PR team's approach, it's framed as seeking assurances. When Lively and Reynolds do PR damage control, it's just them protecting their image. Oh, and now the New York Times wants you to believe that Wallace is running a bot farm. Again, on another occasion, he wondered whether they were deploying fake bots on social media. Literally, Baldoni asking if bots are used, which if he were actually orchestrating some massive PR hit job, why would he need to ask that? He's saying, I don't want bots. But the New York Times still wants you to associate Wallace with shady tactics. Mr. Wallace's operation, she wrote, is doing something very specific in terms of what they do. We don't know. And Jamie and Jed connected on this. So sometimes, you don't know. Maybe they're, making sure that the people that supported Johnny Depp see this. Okay. And what? That's not shady. Anyway, translation. We have no idea what Wallace was actually doing, but we'll phrase it like this so it sounds suspicious. Suspicious? They never explained. Oh, I think I'm going to put that on a shirt. Suspicious? They never explained what Wallace's team was actually doing, because if they did, you'd probably realize it was just normal PR work. Baldoni says Lively's team was smearing him, and the New York Times acts like that's a conspiracy theory. Mr. Baldoni, Miss Nathan, and others on the team claimed that their text exchanges that Ms. Lively was using her own public relations team to create bad press about Mr. Baldoni, but cited no evidence to support those claims. Are we serious? The New York Times literally wrote a hit piece on Baldoni, coordinated with Lively's team for months, and now they're acting like it's some wild conspiracy theory that Lively's PR team was involved. Of course she was. The New York Times would rather you believe that Baldoni's PR team was working with the press. Scandalous. But Lively's team, completely innocent. And here's the most blatant spin of all. By mid-August, the team was reveling in the damage to Miss Lively's image. Notice how they offer no quote to back this up? Because if there were actually texts of Baldoni saying, haha, we destroyed her, don't you think the New York Times would have put them in there and printed it out and made sure we all heard about it? Yeah, they would have. But they probably don't exist. Instead, they just make you assume that that's what happened. Here's a takeaway. The New York Times needs you to believe Baldoni is a villain, even when his own texts don't support that narrative. If Baldoni were running a smear campaign, he wouldn't be constantly second-guessing it. If Wallace were running some secret bot operation, the New York Times would have actual proof, not vague phrasing. If Lively wasn't using her own PR team, then how did the New York Times article even happen? Watch out for this trick. When journalists don't have real evidence, they just tell you what they believe was happening. Back to the article. The narrative online is so freaking good, and fans are still sticking up for Justin. And there's literally been no pickup of those 2 articles, which is actually shocking to me. But I see this as a total success, as does Justin, Jennifer Abel said. You did such amazing work, Melissa Nathan said. Narrative is crazy good, so did you, anonymous text exchange. The majority of socials are so pro Justin, and I don't even agree with half of them. Translation: negative press about Baldoni isn't catching on, and people are still supporting him. Yay! And why is that shocking to them? Because Lively's attempt to control the narrative was falling apart, but they know how powerful Lively is. She was fumbling her own press tour, avoiding discussing domestic violence in a movie, all that stuff. The alcohol brand, bringing Ryan Reynolds in. So yeah, Baldoni's team saw the media struggling to spin Lively as a victim, and they were relieved. The New York Times wants you to think relief equals guilt. You did such amazing work, said Melissa Nathan. Narrative is crazy good, so did you, anonymous text exchange. Oh no, a PR team is happy that their client isn't being destroyed by false narratives. What a crime. I wonder who the person they didn't, the anonymous person is, like maybe somebody on that they want to protect. Who knows? Anyway, oh no, a PR team is happy that their client is being destroyed by false narratives. What a crime. And the next one is my favorite. The majority of socials are so pro Justin, and I just don't even agree with half of them. Not agreeing with everything being said is not thinking Baldoni is guilty, okay? Like, I'm thrilled Baldoni and his team are getting their truth out there, but even I see some TMZ articles quoting anonymous sources about Ryan signing fake autographs, and I'm like, okay, that's ridiculous. By the way, I worked for a Comic-Con show. There's many people that show up with like exact same posters or whatever, and a lot of times the actual site people like in the thing bring them with them anyway. But that's the same thing here. Nathan is not agreeing with every single pro Baldoni take. It doesn't mean that she thinks he's guilty. It just means that she can separate facts from internet noise. Hey, Jennifer, Melissa, the whole world has joined the group chat, and we agree it's freaking good. And no amount of New York Times PR spin can change that. So here's the last part. On August 16th, oh wait, not yet. On August 16th, Melissa shared the Daily Mail article headline, "Is Blake Lively set to be canceled?" with references to, oh wait, this is the last part, I think. No, not yet. Almost done. Sorry, I'm getting a little brain dead here. On August 16th, Melissa Nathan shared the Daily Mail article headline, "Is Blake Lively set to be canceled?" with references to hard-to-watch videos and a tone-deaf promotional Q&A. Wow, you really outdid yourself with this piece, Miss Abel responded. That's why you hired me, right? Ms. Nathan replied. I'm the best. The New York Times is banking on you trusting them blindly. This is one of the dirtiest tricks in the media playbook, presenting half the story and expecting you to just believe them because they're the New York Times. Here's the reality. The public didn't have access to the full text messages. The New York Times did. They knew that Nathan and Abel were being sarcastic. They still printed it like it was a confession. That is not journalism. That is manipulation. And this is how they get away with it. They make you think that they've done all the work for you. They present a quote in the most damning way possible. They don't provide full context. They assume you won't question them because, well, it's the New York Times, right? This is the same attitude Taylor Lorenz had when she wrote a hit piece on Jake Paul. When people questioned her reporting, she literally said, "Trust me, bro." Not literally, but basically, "Trust me, bro. We're the New York Times. We never get anything wrong." Ugh. The takeaway, don't let the New York Times trick you into thinking for a second that just because they wrote something that it's true. The New York Times knew that these text messages were being sarcastic, but they published them anyway, hoping you'd take them at face value. They're not giving you the truth. They're feeding you a version of reality that benefits them. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Now we're at the last part. Almost. Second to last. A brand marketing consultant, Tara Keat, produced a report in the New York Times for Ms. Lively that concluded that she had likely been the object of a targeted multi-channel online attack similar to one against Ms. Heard, and that it was damaging her reputation. The report did not identify who was behind the attack, but by analyzing the entirety of Google's search index for Ms. Lively's name, It found that 35% of the results also included a reference to Mr. Baldoni. This was highly unusual given the length of her career. That's my alarm that I need to go to the concert soon. This was highly unusual given the length of her career, the company said, and suggested that the media environment was being manipulated. A separate report by Ms. Lively's hair care company, Blake Brown, concluded that the social media onslaught also had a negative effect on that business. The product line, which had launched in August with record-breaking sales, estimated that it lost as much as 78% in sales. And by the way, that hair care line, apparently they're like leaving the team is just like leaving positive comments on all their posts. Huh. Oh, the New York Times is calling Blake Lively Amber Heard 2.0, but not for the reasons they want you to think. A brand marketing consultant, Tarek, produced a report in August for Miss Lively that concluded that she had likely been the object of a targeted multi-channel online smear attack. I can't say that fast enough. Oh, so now Lively is Amber Heard? They really think this comparison is going to save her? Let's be clear, no one turned on Amber Heard because of some online conspiracy. People turned on her because they watched her lie in real time. The New York Times conveniently forgets to mention why Heard actually lost public support. She said she pledged millions to charity, but never donated a cent, or not that much, or maybe she donated Elon's money. But anyway, she fake cried on the stand without shedding a single real tear. She allegedly pooped in Johnny Depp's bed. Her own assistant, her own friends, even her own recordings exposed her. That wasn't an orchestrated attack. That was the internet seeing the truth. Now, Blake Lively is facing the same reality check. She botched her own PR. She made some weird, out-of-touch comments, borderline bully. She tried to rewrite history and play the victim when it didn't work. And just like Amber Heard, people didn't buy it. Here's what's really happening. The New York Times is taking advantage of the fact that most people don't understand search engine optimization, or SEO. So they can spin a completely normal internet phenomenon into a sinister conspiracy. By analyzing the entirety of Google's search index for Miss Lively's name, it found that 35% of the results also included a reference to Mr. Baldoni. And that's not shocking. That's how search engines work. Like, search Kim Kardashian in like 2021, and you're going to find Kanye, right? Is that when she dated him? Anyway. At the time of the report was written, Baldoni and Lively weren't even in a public controversy yet. They were promoting a movie together, but the way Lively handled it made people notice something was off. They weren't appearing together in interviews. They weren't standing next to each other at other press events. Lively was making the movie all about herself, even when it didn't make sense. And she wanted people to notice. And guess what? We did. That's why Baldoni's name was showing up in search results, because people were already questioning why these two co-stars weren't acting like co-stars. But instead of admitting that Lively's own actions led to this, the New York Times is trying to frame it as some targeted campaign against her. Tarek does exactly what the New York Times accuses Wallace of. But that's okay because they work for Lively. Let's talk about Tarek. Tarek is not just some neutral brand consultant. They're a reputation management and SEO firm, meaning their entire business model is about controlling online narratives. A separate report by Ms. Lively's hair care company, Blake Brown, said that she lost money. So now they're blaming Baldoni's team for Lively's business failing. Lively's own PR moves tied her entire brand, her hair care line, her Betty Boos brand to this movie. Okay, this is exactly what the New York Times did to me. Instead of blaming the influencers that signed agreements with me for signing agreements that they didn't agree with, by the way, negotiated by their own lawyer, they blame me for being manipulative. What? The New York Times never said in their article, these influencers had their own lawyers, and this is the deal they agreed to. Instead, they want it to be okay for the influencers to just break their contracts and for me to get paid nothing and blah, blah, blah. It's infuriating. Lively's own PR moves tied her entire brand, her hair care line, her Betty Boos brand to this movie. She linked it all together. She made the promo tour about herself. She controlled the narrative until it backfired. That's not a smear campaign. That's her own decisions catching up to her. Now the New York Times uses SEO confusion to manipulate you. The average person doesn't think about how search engines work, and the New York Times is counting on that. They throw in technical sounding phrases like analyzing the entirety of Google's search index to make it sound like something sinister was happening. They act like it's shocking that two co stars in a film are linked in search results, when that's the most predictable thing in the world. They ignore the fact that Tarakeet is literally managing Lively's reputation because that would make their argument fall apart. If the New York Times were being honest, they tell you that this is normal SEO behavior. Instead, they're framing it as an attack because they assume you won't know any better. So here's the takeaway. The New York Times is using SEO confusion to spin the narrative. Duh. Baldoni and Lively weren't in a controversy at first. She made it into one and made sure everybody knew that he was unpopular. Imagine like what was going on. She basically judge, jury, and executioner, and it's not like he is being accused of assault. No. But he can't even be in the same room with her and the other cast people. Like, what? Because he danced a little too close to her? Make it make sense. Anyway, Google is showing Baldoni and Lively together. Google showing Baldoni and Lively together isn't a conspiracy. It's how search engines work. Tarakeet is literally managing Lively's reputation, but that's not framed as manipulation because it doesn't fit the New York Times narrative. The New York Times doesn't want you questioning them. They just want you to believe whatever they tell you. In an interview on Access Hollywood, he said, there's never an excuse. Okay, this is the last part. I'm not going to play the clown noise because this is important. So listen up, guys. In an interview on Access Hollywood, he said, there's never an excuse to hurt a woman physically or emotionally. He added, this is Baldoni, we men have to step up and figure out how we can be better allies. The New York Times final move, making sure you learn the right lesson. All right. Let's talk about how the New York Times wraps up a hit piece, because this isn't just about taking someone down. It's about controlling what you, the reader, take away from it. Here's how they ended their piece on Baldoni. In an interview on Access Hollywood, he said, there's never an excuse to hurt a woman physically or emotionally. He added, we men have to step up and figure out how we can be better allies. Translation, see, even Baldoni himself admits men are the problem. Now compare that to how they ended the hit piece about me. If I could give any piece of advice to young creators, she said, Brittany Broski said, it would be don't sign anything. Translation, hey, TikTokers, don't trust independent managers, only sign with the big agencies. The goal of their last line isn't just to smear, it's to make sure the industry gets the message. For me, it was a warning to influencers. Don't work with a bootstrap female manager. Go with WME, UTA, or CAA instead. For Baldoni, it's a warning to the public. Don't believe men when they advocate for women. Only trust our anointed activists like Blake, Ryan, and the New York Times. Notice how they never let their targets have the last word. The final word in the article is usually where a journalist lets their subject redeem themselves. But when the New York Times doesn't want you to respect someone, they'll make sure their last words only reinforce the narrative. For me, they cherry picked a quote from a creator who didn't understand contracts and framed it like I was out here suing kids for sport. By the way, he wasn't a kid. He was over 21. For Baldoni, they found a quote where he's apologizing for being a man. And that's on purpose. Because if they actually let Baldoni have the last word on his own terms, the audience might walk away thinking, well, maybe this is a guy who isn't so bad or just a bit misunderstood. And the New York Times just can't have that. The New York Times last line is always the real message. For me, it was don't trust indie managers, only big agencies. For Baldoni, it's don't believe male allies, only New York Times approved feminism. For anyone they smear, the last line is meant to kill their credibility and reinforce the real agenda. So next time you read a hit piece, don't just skim the ending. You should analyze it, because that's where the New York Times tells you exactly what they want you to believe. At the end of the day, the media only gets away with this if you let them. They frame, twist, and manipulate, and then they hope you won't notice. But now you do. The next time you read an article, ask yourself what's missing, what's being framed, who's set to benefit, whose voice is being amplified, and who's silenced. Because if you let them tell you what to think, you've already lost. And if you're over cry bullies using the media to control everything, you can grab some merch at littlemissjacob.com. The Cry Bully collection is live, everybody. I have to head out because I'm going to a concert, but thank you guys. Thanks the chat for hanging out with me in here. I know Fridays are a busy day. Everybody kind of does their streams on Fridays, but thank you for joining me. If you're a business owner and you know and you know someone who needs short form content that actually works, head to creatorgenius.com. Make sure you like, comment, and share, subscribe, and ring that notification bell because we're not done exposing here. Plus, this is a one-woman show, and it takes a massive amount of time to do this, but it's totally worth it. I appreciate your support. Please like, comment, share, subscribe. Oh, I'm saying it again, but please do. And your homework, besties, please keep that hashtag cancel the times trend going. And I will see you on the next one. Hope you guys have a good weekend. And if you think I should cover anything specifically, now that we're done with this, I really wanted to go over what the New York Times does so you guys could, like, next time somebody gets smeared or next time we move on to the next subject, which who knows is going to be because we've been covering this for, people are not over this yet, apparently. But yeah, next time maybe you guys are going to be on top of it. All right. See you guys on the next one. Bye.
Watch your step, she's here to play. And though she be but little, she is fierce. Takes the drama, cuts it clear. This is the Little Miss Jacob Show. Bullies beware, she'll take you down in a thread, you know. Play it cool, keep it calm, let the rhythm flow. Climbing high while they're stuck down below. No shortcuts, no cheats, she's here to win. Every comeback's fire, let the games begin. Watch the moves unfold. Every word's a strike, every line is gold. Take your shot. But she's 10 steps ahead. Every headline reads the thread she just said. It's the rhythm of the bold, the beat of the free, the sound of ambition, the way it should be. Step by step, let the groove take control. Turn the highs and lows into pure gold. This is the show. This is the vibe. The Little Miss Jacob groove is alive. And though she be but little, she is fierce. Cuts through the noise with words that pierce. It's not just wit, it's how you move. Every challenge fuels the groove. It's the rhythm of the bold, the beat of the free, the sound of ambition, the way it should be. Step by step, let the groove take control. Turn the highs and lows into pure gold. This is the show. This is the vibe. The Little Miss Jacob groove is alive. Woo. Bullies beware, she's calling it out. No room for doubt, she'll flip the whole route. This is the Little Miss Jacob Show, where the real ones rise and the rest lay low.